Actor Jim Caviezel and Tim Ballard, head of Operation Underground Railroad. Thank you, gentlemen, for being part of Three Questions today.
Thank you for having us.
So good to have you here. Now, Tim, as the head of Operation Underground Railroad, you've got quite a lot of things on your plate, but you've partnered up with Jim Caviezel,
yes,
of all people.
Yes.
What are you guys doing together?
Well, we were approached several years ago by a production company that wanted to do a feature film that tells the story of our child rescue mission. From the time I was in the government to why I left and where we went, who we rescued, and you know, 3 years ago they said, who do you want to play you? If you could pick any actor in the world. And I said, oh, that's easy, Jim Caviezel, if you can get him. And you know, 3 years later, here we are. They got him to commit to playing me in this film. And in about 3 weeks, we're heading down to Bogota, Colombia, to begin filming what's currently called The Sound of Freedom, the story of Operation Underground Railroad.
Tim, what was it about Jim Caviezel that said, this is the guy that has to portray me? And Jim, what was it about this role that said, I got to do this role?
Well, I'll tell you that a couple things. Some things I can't articulate, I guess. The Count of Monte Cristo was always kind of the go-to movie for me. It was so inspiring. Jim was inspiring in that, the way that there was a light in the message and what he portrayed in that. And then, of course, the Passion of the Christ. It's important to me. So much of what we do and our foundation is based on our faith, on our belief in God and in prayer. And it was important that the person leading this project had those fundamental beliefs as well.
If you went back years ago when I was making the choice to be an actor, I almost never became an actor. I almost never married my beautiful wife of 22 years. I almost never adopted my children, and I almost never played Jesus in The Passion. All of them were tough decisions to make, but they were the right decisions to make. And after The Passion, my wife and I adopted a little boy who had a brain tumor. And we didn't know the outcome. We didn't know if it would be good or bad. We went back to China to get him. And of course, we have a friend of ours who was helping me in this adopting, Jenny Hull, and who happens to be family friends with his family. Another coincidence. And then we got Bo, went through the surgery. It was a miraculous surgery from 7 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night. He had brain surgery, and then we ended up adopting a little girl who also had a brain tumor. Our final little boy had cancer. We went through chemotherapy with him, and people would ask me in my industry, what about unwanted children? I said, I have 3 of them, and I want them. And so I read this script, and here are these unwanted children, and it broke my heart. And the story was really compelling, and it just, to me, it's the second most important film I've done since The Passion.
Jim, you have said that playing Jesus Christ in The Passion of the Christ by Mel Gibson changed your life.
Yep.
How did it change your life? And how does that change inform how you were approaching playing Tim Ballard?
Well, first of all, Tim is going into places that are very dangerous. Just like, you know, some of the great saints, martyrs of the church, they put their lives on the line. And he has my ultimate respect, especially saving little children. I talked to Tim about it earlier, about, you know, where's your view on slavery? Well, I'd have been there. Okay, well, what about the Jews and Auschwitz? Oh, I'd have been there for them. What about Jesus? You know, I played him. Oh, I'd have been there for them. I said, what do you think about children? Oh, I don't want to hear that. I said, I'm sorry, you wouldn't have been there for the Jew, or you wouldn't have been there for Jesus and several other. What's going on right now? This is happening everywhere. And he had my profound respect. I didn't know that, you know, I just wanted to be an actor, but I didn't realize it was going to involve me getting electrocuted, having open heart surgery, struggling physically, which is what I did after the film. And I had to grow up as a human being. Ego is really checked. You know, when you think, a man told me one time, TNT, boom. He says, I want you to remember this, TNP, take nothing personal, because that's what it takes to do something, playing a controversial image like Jesus. You represent that to the world, and many people hate him. But for those that love him, it's worth it.
Mm. You truly went through the valley of the shadow of death in portraying Jesus Christ in Mel Gibson's The Passion of the Christ. Share with us what that did to you spiritually and what it did to you physically.
Well, my makeup times were from 2 in the morning till 10 in the morning. And then from 10:30 to 4:30, I was usually freezing on a cross. Mel had shot it at many different angles, and then I got hypothermia. I had to come back and take a 2-hour shower to get all this makeup that they'd never had tried before. It was the first time ever done. After that, the infection started on the skin. I had to go learn the Aramaic, the Hebrew, and the Latin. And of course, it's a whole, for an English-speaking American, it's a completely different place in the mouth, and you have to work on that, and you're exhausted. I was bedded by 11 o'clock at night, and I was up at 2. Same thing. And eventually, the cold got to me, and I got sick. Then eventually, pneumonia came in, and then I experienced a shoulder separation. After the shoulder separation, they put me back on the cross, and when the winds would hit the cross, because we're on a 1,000-foot cliff, and the thing is going back and forth, and you know the thing could snap off. You're tied up, and every time that it'd be 5-knot winds, and all of a sudden, because you're on a 1,000-foot drop, it's like the Grand Canyon. The wind would come up, and all of a sudden it'd be a 30-knot wind, and then it would snap your shoulder out. I started to lose a lot of weight. I got very sick, and this went on for months. And 5.5 months of that, afterwards, I had problems with heart murmurs. I was in AFib all the time. My first surgery was in 2009. They tried to correct through ablation surgery, and then so I was taking Coumadin and all kinds of medication to control the heart. And in 2014, my valve completely collapsed, and that was probably from the infections that I was getting from the flu and the virus that I got while I was doing the filming. As far as working after the film was the biggest film that year, it was no jobs. And I know Mel didn't show the greatest behavior at that time, but I just played Jesus. So why are you not, why are you avoiding me? And it's just, you just don't get it, kind of a thing. And I go back to the whole thing, and this is part of, when I read the Bible, and it talks about the Beatitudes, blessed are you when you're persecuted. And in fact, it talks about it in the movie. I never would ever go back and say that I made a mistake. I would have made the worst mistake if I never made that. And that was the thing, as a believer in Christ and a Christian faith, you can't avoid the cross. Every athlete has to go through suffering, right, to be a champion. Sure. There's no pill I can take to get myself in shape. You have to do the work. And I was just so blessed, because I look at my own transgressions against God, and I say, gee, why would you pick me? But he did. He doesn't always choose the best, but he chose you, so what are you going to do? You
were available.
And I come back to this film. Tim, saw a movie I did in Monte Cristo, and I always, my favorite scene in that movie is always when Richard Harris plays the priest, is dying on the ground in a moment of real despair. He looks up and he says, Dantes, your final lesson, do not commit the crime you now serve the sentence for. Remember, God saith, vengeance is mine. And I looked down at him, and really from my own heart, I said, but I don't believe in God. In other words, God could never love a sinner like me. And he says, it doesn't matter. He believes in you. And I broke. And it wasn't written that way. It just was. And he happened to see that movie and moved him. And he came around to me to do this one. I really believe in the cause, and it's worth your life.
Tim, your Operation Underground Railroad really slides against the grain in so many ways. I mean, truly, there is nothing else out there like Operation Underground Railroad. How difficult is it for you to stay on task, and what are some of the challenges that you face in going in to these countries?
Yeah, you're right. This is, in so many ways, going against the grain. And people told me I was crazy to leave my government job to go do this, to privatize the rescue of children. How is that even possible? It's a new mold that we were trying to build about creating private-public partnerships. And the reason we did it was because this problem, I mean, this is the fastest growing criminal enterprise on the planet. By the millions, children are being taken and abused in the worst ways. And I recognized that unless we created a movement around it, it wasn't going to go away. And the only way to create a movement is to create a vehicle where you can invite people to come in. That's what a nonprofit can do. That's what a private organization can do. We can invite people in and participate and build this movement. But it was new. It was a new concept. And some of the challenges have been to convince some of our government partners that this is a good model, and we can prove it. You know, before we could rescue 5 to 10 kids in one hit. Well, now it's up to, we can do 20, 30, 40. Why? Because we can attack it together. The government does what they do best. We do what we do best. The aftercare partners do what they do best, and together, it's explosive what can happen. And then we invite the people in. All the people of the world can rise up and do and play their role. And so it's been somewhat of a challenge, but we've broken through a lot of those barriers. Our Utah politicians have been great. Senator Hatch has helped us with a new bill that he got it passed in the Senate, working in the House, that formalizes exactly what I'm talking about, formalizing a fusion center where the private and public sectors come together to attack modern day slavery. And so we have made progress, and it's through people in the media. Fox 13 has been wonderful telling our stories, what Jim's doing for us now. It's about telling the story and providing the solution, the light. It's a light in the darkness, and inviting people to be part of that light.
Is that what attracted you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, right now we celebrate evil. God can bring good from evil, but so much of the time now, this is not like back in the day when Chuck Heston was doing, Judah Ben-Hur. You do a movie like that now, like The Passion, you're going to get hit for it. And we celebrate evil, it seems. But regardless, what am I going to do? And we were just with Mike Tomlin the other day, the Pittsburgh Steelers football coach, and of course people are talking about whether to kneel or stand or in the flag salute, and people spilled their blood. Why can't we stand in union with each other and say, hey, regardless of what we agree on, disagree on something, we have to be together. There were many great Americans that gave their lives for this, and that we have the ability to agree or disagree on issues. But nonetheless, National Football League, people are talking about it. Now, that's a big league. $13 billion made last year. Imagine that the NFL is not even a JV team compared to sexual trafficking. Imagine it being on the freshman team, because sex trafficking is makes three times more money. If money is the god, then it's 3 times more powerful than the NFL. And yet people are doing this, putting their head in the sand like an ostrich. I can't live that way. And I have such respect for this guy. He's such a wonderful man, but he's doing a lot of things that Mother Teresa did, and I summarize what she said, that any country that kills its own children has no future. And if we continue to allow this to go on, there will be no place to hide.
What are the two of you doing to prepare for this project, and you portraying Tim Ballard?
Yeah. Well, I get to turn my hair blonde right now. They haven't quite got that right.
Because it's usually dark.
I get to be around him, and I try to find what's common between both of us. And I was telling Tim, and I was like, I was given a gift to act, but it's not my gift. It came from above. And I so respect him because he could have done something, you know, for himself. And he's not. He's doing it. And it takes people like that to die on themselves. Billy Graham did the same thing. You know, you have to, this isn't my choice is choosing my father to come into my life and to come through the work that I do, because I want, it's not my light, it's his. But I ask him as a servant, just say, please, will you help me here and play the best Tim that I can on the screen and make the best film. And I know that we have a great filmmaker in Alejandro and his artistic sense of it, because it is so hard that, you know, you can't just show the darkness here, but you got to find the way to pierce that darkness using light and different things with the artistry and filmmaking, which is right on. He's right on target with that. So we'll have, whether people see the film or not, you know, it was kind of my idea when I made Monte Cristo. I said, look, I know there have been 19 versions of this movie. There might have been ones better than mine, but still, you're not taking God out of this movie. It's going to be in it. He will be in this film.
So what physically are you guys doing to prepare for filming?
Well, so that's one reason Jim's up here in Utah this week. We've been putting him through basically a crash course, trying to get his, you know, him into the heart and soul and mind of our mission. We have all our operators, that a lot of them came in from overseas to come help train him. We've been going through footage. We actually planned a real rescue mission that's coming up soon, and
he'll go on it.
He'll likely go on it and go undercover. And he's been training with our SEALs this week.
Wow.
Close quarter combat training, CQC, and just all the things that, and he, of course, he'll be down there too to say, Tim, what would you do in this particular situation right here? And there's a lot of measuring. Mm-hmm. And then at some point, it just starts to, you start to get what this thing is. And then the film, when they go to edit it, it just, if you do it right, it's quite remarkable. It starts to take a life of its own. And hopefully it's better than even what we shoot.
2 + 2 = 5,
Sometimes,
kind of a thing.
It's exactly right.
Operation Underground Railroad works with various jurisdictions around the world and various agencies, and I would imagine there is sometimes a frustration level, depending on where you are operating, in the effectiveness of what you're doing out there.
Absolutely. I mean, I'll tell you this, probably 90% of the countries we work in, the case that we work with them is their first anti-trafficking case they've ever done. You know, a lot of them have the laws on the books because of a lot of international pressure that's in the last decade that's kind of been placed upon them. They have the laws, but then they say, well, what do we do? I mean, how do we infiltrate these trafficking organizations? And that's where we come in and say, well, we can teach you how to do it. From the digital forensic side, from, you know, going undercover on the dark net, to physical undercover. What do you want? And we can teach you. We can bring you the tools. Unfortunately, this is a sad commentary in our own country, but we are the demand for child sex. I mean, the highest consumer of child pornography is the United States.
It's shameful.
So that's why they can use our operators who are Western-looking, American-looking, in these law enforcement agencies, like in Colombia, for example, or Mexico, or wherever we're working. They can place us in the right place, sign us up as informants, and we can get in quick into the darkest parts of the trafficking networks, and so it's you know, it's a challenge, mostly on the legal side, to make sure the prosecution is a good one, that the right precedents are being set, and we are kind of helping them through that. We have a full-time prosecutor on our staff who goes down and helps them see how they can apply their laws. So it's not just about the action and finding. That's actually the easy part of the whole thing, is finding the bad guy selling the kids. It's so prevalent. The hard part is the political side, the prosecutorial side, the legal side, to make sure it's done right, to convince them, our partners, to have the courage to go for this and be the first to jump into this dark world.
I just want to say something that's quite remarkable. I was sitting in the operation room, and the great care of planning the operation, but once it's done, it's not as if they just leave, because the kids I mean, they could be taken out, and there you go again. And what's going to happen to them? Probably suffer a lot worse. But they're, you know, when we take the children out, let's not bring them down to the jail cell. You know, you have some 8-year-old child that's in a traumatized.
Yeah.
And the care that they say is like, well, let's get them away from the facility. Let's put them in a place that's not a jail, and it's a, you know, some beautiful area where they can relax and start to de-thaw. We were talking about the syndrome, the Stockholm syndrome that you know, that these kids have. They're terrorized, and what is that guy going to come back?
Sexual abuse for anyone is a traumatic experience. It leaves horrific scars, especially on children. What happens to the children after you've rescued them, and can they ever really heal?
Yeah, the answer is yes, they can, and it's the most important part of our planning. You know, Jim was there the other day. You know, the first question we asked, we had the police up from this particular country that we're working in. The first question isn't where are we going to do the sting operation, how many bad guys are we going to. The first question is, how many kids do you think are going to be rescued on this operation, and what is the plan to heal them permanently? And that's where we come in. We have our aftercare department, and we start planning that first. Because if we can't figure that out, we're not going to do the rescue operation. And when you take these kids in, it's not just a short time. This is a lifetime potentially. We're prepared to take these kids and put them in a place where they can heal for years and years until they're ready to stand on their own. We can't assume that there's parents waiting to receive them, because generally that's not going to happen. Because there was no family, that's why they got into this. And so that part is planned as delicately and as passionately, if not more so, than the actual sting operation.
One of the things that has made Operation Underground Railroad so successful is that it operates relatively obscurely. Now you're going to make a movie. Are you worried about whether that's going to affect your effectiveness and the safety of the jump teams that go in the future?
Yeah. No, I'm not, because it's a great question. It's something we have to consider. We're careful what we reveal in media and in this film. We will depict the techniques that we use that are things that are happening regardless of if we exist or not. For example, a sex party with children. That's every weekend in every major city in the entire world. So if we depict that technique as in creating this, you know, environment where the bad guys can show up and present who they are and the evil in their hearts, well, whether they see it, the movie, or me talking about it right now or not, isn't gonna give us away, because they're doing that anyway. Now, there's certain things that we do, particularly on the cyber crimes, of things where we would never talk about, because they are things that there's direct countermeasures for. And if by chance someone does see this interview or sees the film, and they're about to set up a sex party in Thailand or India or wherever, and they think, what if it's those Underground Railroad guys? Well, let's not do that. Well, good, hallelujah. Then we won that one. They're thinking now. There's a deterrent. There's a potential consequence, and we have them somewhat on the run. So we're very careful with what we put out. The script is very carefully read by all of our executives, even U.S. government people that I trust, and we're very careful with our messaging all the time. And then if you come out like I'm doing right now in this interview, or if I select other people from my team, they no longer can do undercover work because they can't be recognized. But we have so many teams out that you'll never see their faces. So we're very cognizant of the danger of what we can say in public, and we only say those things that will help us and not hurt us.
What I loved about the screenplay, and believe me, I'm very picky when it comes to screenplays. I've been doing this for 30 years, and this is a fine screenplay, and I was lucky to be chosen, that Tim came to me for this. But know that it's going to be one hell of a challenge, and I never get the easy ones. This is going to be, but I love it. And what's different about this one is there's great hope in it. It has such redemption in it. And the good guys win.
Jim, you are no stranger to physical exertion and danger in the roles that you have played. I'm thinking of your portrayal of Jesus Christ in Mel Gibson's The Passion of the Christ. Are you worried about your safety in this role?
Oh, I've got Jesus with me. I'm fine. I've got a great team around. I'm worried about my safety. This is what I was born to do. It's like some people enjoy climbing Mount Everest, and this is kind of the Mount Everest of filmmaking, and it's worth dying for.
Mm. Are you afraid you might die?
Could happen.
Because, I mean, you were struck by lightning during the filming of The Passion of the Christ.
The film has to be finished before I can die. I'll be good.
Okay. Are you worried about his physical safety at all?
You know, we're used to taking on those threats, and we have a plan for him, like we do for the rest of our team, to protect ourselves. And like Jim, we're a praying group, and we believe in that power. That's the ultimate power of protection.
Who's paying for this movie to come about?
I think Jim's. Aren't you footing the bill? A great group of people have come together to invest in this production. Some of them, the Carlos Slim family is involved.
Really?
From Mexico. JP, John Paul DeJoria.
Oh, Fox has helped distributing it.
Really?
Yeah, Fox, Century Fox.
And for the folks who don't know who Carlos Slim is, tell them who he is.
He's one of the wealthiest men in the world. Telecommunications in Mexico, Latin America. His son Patrick is the real the point of contact for that. He's very passionate about what we're doing and fighting trafficking. And then there's several other groups that have come in to invest in this picture, and it's the people that have invested in it are true believers in what we're doing, and they are this is not just a movie, it's a movement, and they want to continue pushing that movement forward.
Who is funding Operation Underground Railroad, though? We know about the movie, but who's... I mean, because you guys are only expanding in your operations. Yeah,
we're a nonprofit. We're a 501c3 nonprofit, and our machine is fueled by the kindness and the charity of people who will help.
We were just with doTERRA today.
Yeah, doTERRA, for example, Utah-based doTERRA. They're probably our biggest corporate sponsor. We're just there all afternoon. Mm-hmm. We're doing amazing things with their help. We're building aftercare shelters. We're providing amazing tools to law enforcement throughout the world. Mobile crime labs, detection dogs that can detect digital media that contain child pornography. Just cutting edge technology that doTERRA is an example of one of our great helps. Especially, again, they're here in Utah, and we just couldn't be happier with them and their kindness and their hearts to help us. And then the people, you know, about half of our operations are funded by people who give $5, you know, around $5 to $20 a month. That's, I mean, so people think, I'm just giving $5 a month, what's that? That is funding half of our rescue operations, so.
Well, so what is the schedule like? I mean, you're going to start shooting here in the next couple of weeks. When do you anticipate the film being ready to release, and what do you hope it accomplishes?
Well, from what I understand, they'll be done by the end of the summer, and sometime next year is when they plan to release it. They don't have an exact date yet, and everyone has the same vision. It's a shared vision from the producers to the directors to the writers to the actors, and that is, this is just the beginning. We have to get these stories out. People don't, but you know, you go back to the original abolitionists of the 19th century. They're our heroes. How did they strike the end, the beginning of the end of slavery? It was telling stories. It was Harriet Beecher Stowe writing Uncle Tom's Cabin. It was Frederick Douglass getting out and telling his story. Harriet Tubman taking action and then telling the stories about what happened in that action. That's what people woke up to. And then they got so loud and they rose up so powerfully that it shook the government, and they had to act, and that was the beginning of the end. It was the people that rose, and so our hope is that that's what this movie will do, just like maybe a modern day version of Uncle Tom's Cabin, you know, where it tells a story that awakens the world, And it's brilliant, the strategy, because really they're thinking about this right now. These are true believers from, like I said, the producers, the writers. So they picked an American star. They have a Mexican movie star, Eduardo Verástegui, who has a major role. They have a Colombian star. They have a star from Spain. And they're doing this on purpose because they want this film to be distributed throughout the world so that we see, look, we have to come together. All these nations of the world need to come together. And the legislation we're working on with Senator Hatch and Congresswoman Mia Love, that is going to do the same thing. It's going to go along with the film, creating kind of the vehicle whereby we can all jump in. And so it has to be the beginning of the end of modern-day slavery. That's what this film is to do.
Jim, from where you sit, what do you hope to accomplish through this film?
Oh, abolitionist, that it ends. I mean, but regardless, I tried to do something. And I don't want to be a guy that sits in the middle and makes a choice to do nothing. That is a choice. I'm blessed to know this guy. And, you know, my job right now is to be great. And with God's help, I'll be phenomenal.
Actor Jim Caviezel from The Passion of the Christ.
Thank you.
And Tim Ballard from Operation Underground Railroad. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being part of Three Questions.
Thank you.